Okay, so today's session is about who is a captain and introducing this concept of collective conscious. So, on those lines, I'm just going to send a couple of links on the chat. I'd like you to just go there and fill that out. And this is a question that we've already asked. One sec. How do I? Yeah. Okay, did everybody get that? So it's just a link that asks some simple questions, which is who's a good captain and who's a bad captain. And to start off with, let's just, I mean, good and bad in quotes here. So maybe let's take a couple of minutes to answer that, a minute, and give me a thumbs up. If you're done, I'll send you the next question. Okay. I'm not able to see this for some reason. That was a fail. And I have one more thing for you guys to fill out while you're at it. Okay, for some reason, this turned out to be a failure, and I cannot see what you guys have typed out there. Ah, okay. There we go. Can you guys see what I'm sharing?
Yes.
Thumbs up, thumbs. Okay. Awesome. So we have some words. Do we want to add more words to this? So I'm assuming a good captain keeps the team bonded, they're helpful, they're confident, they are focused on improvement. Okay, I'd actually like you guys to interact with me. I think since it's a small group, is that okay?
Of course.
Guys,
Yeah, sorry.
okay. Okay, so anyway, so the objective of this session is we were talking about, okay, I'm going to stop sharing the screen since we don't have too many things, and I'm going to take it on from here. So, okay, So we have I'm sure like all of us have a bunch of characteristics that we have in mind for who is a good captain and who is a bad captain, or who needs to, sort of have what kind of qualities so that they meet the team's goals. So usually I'm sure like there will be a bunch of positive things that are associated with being a good captain and a bunch of not so nice things. So you don't want, so I've done this for my team before, which is DOD, and we had a bunch of adjectives there. So I'm just going to use that and tell you guys what we came up with then. So we said a good captain is inspiring, is a role model, is trusting, is punctual, consistent, confident, bold, trustworthy, regular to the field, patient, leader, intelligent, adaptive, etc., etc., etc. And a bad captain is partial, is lazy, is arrogant, is biased, is egoistic. Biased came up a bunch of times, is ignorant, impatient, and a bunch of things. So, from well, what we've seen, like these are ideas that we think somebody who is worthy of, leadership should have. These are characters or images that we think they should have. So, is it really a problem if we have too many leaders in the team? So, when it comes to captaincy, how I see it, right? Well, there are obviously a bunch of requirements from being a captain. They need to be empathetic, they need to be able to communicate, they need to be able to listen, and they also need to be like technically skilled, like they need to be able to make strategic decisions, because well, at the end of the day we are playing ultimate frisbee. So, and it's a game and we have certain objectives that we have to fulfill there. So with regards to that, I feel like a lot of the time what happens in teams is we take some did you guys happen to fill out the next question also? Let me just check. Or what are some of the common problems that a captain faces? You can unmute yourself and just tell me. Like, as a captain, have you faced some things, or what are the things that you face?
I think too many opinions, managing multiple opinions, and trying to kind of,
Okay.
I mean, or when you're in the middle of a game and you want to run something, and then there are, a lot of contradicting opinions that and you still want to get everybody on the same board to kind of, I guess, reach a common goal. I think that could be
Okay.
something that's quite difficult.
Okay. Yeah. Any other things a captain could face?
Yeah, I
Sorry,
think I had some. Sorry, go ahead.
go for it, go for it.
No, I think I was kind of a little bit of what was said previously itself, especially from a club team point of view. I think everybody comes with varying levels of commitment, and like getting everybody on the same page and equally committed to a goal, I think is a big challenge that I've personally faced.
Same point, yeah. Buy-in, pretty much.
Okay. So, so this brings us to the next thing also, which is the whole idea of collective conscious, right? Which is you are not there just as a player, but your whole entire team has a shared collective conscious. And whatever you put in is what you will reap, as a team. So, with coming back to that and coming back to captaincy, the point of, well, I maybe we've misunderstood the session a little bit as to it's not like, hey, these are the things you should do to be a good captain. But the point that I was coming to was that um, these leadership skills that we expect in our captain are skills that each of us need to individually show, because we expect it in them, because that's what we sort of take on as the team's values, right? Somewhere. Or like the team has a bunch of values and then it picks a captain who sort of goes along with that team. So when it comes to being a captain, I feel like each person needs to be their own captain on the field first and on the team. Because like from what like I've seen also of captaincy and how people have dealt with approaching people and like wanting things on the field, it feels like a lot of the time we make the captains do a lot of emotional work for us. So I, in some senses, like like if you throw away the disc and well, somebody is responsible for it, right? And there are two ways in which you can see it. One is, yeah, I've thrown away the disc, and the other is, oh no, I've thrown away the disc, I'm a terrible person, I don't know what I was thinking, or all of these things. So while this is, there's no right thought, so to say, to have once you've thrown away the disc, but you can sort of filter what you put into this shared collective conscious. So when you have this thought and when you react or act from it, it is going to be added to this collective conscious of your team at that point of time. Similarly, when it comes to this, and when I say collective conscious, it is a bunch of shared beliefs, ideas, images. So even as a person, like say I would have a collected conscious or collecting conscious, so something which is from society, from the institutions that I've been in, and life experiences, and also everything that my family has gone through, right? So if I have certain ideas, those ideas are not just my own, but they are coming from somewhere. So with regards to that, when it comes to collective conscious, you want to be super intentional about what you are adding to the team. And with even setting team culture, so say you have a meeting about what you want to really get out of this team or what you want this team to stand for, it's easy to say some words but not really think about how an individual will come through on it, and think about all possibilities of it, and teach people to think about it for themselves, so that people can draw boundaries on what they add to your team's collective conscious and what they choose to work out for themselves. Am I making sense?
Can you just pardon whatever you said last thing, because I couldn't able to hear properly.
From where?
Like the captain consciousness.
Okay. So I was saying, like, a captain is, yes, necessary, but a captain's role can somewhere come down to just being technically, being technically sound and strategically sound. Because if, people management is the biggest problem a captain faces, then the people management part of it should be done by the people themselves and not the captain.
Thank you.
Okay. So, okay, so that was sort of my theme for collective conscious. And with regards to how you add to this or how you practice this, um, well, again, there is no one overall way that will work for everybody. There's no one method. So it's more of, where your team is at right now. How open are you as individuals? How open is the team to consider the cognitive cost of all the users? So again, when I said, like, you throw away the disk and you can either feel bad about it, or you can say, yeah, I've thrown it away, which is sort of like acceptance. It's, I mean, just because I go with, yeah, I've thrown it away, I'll go take care of it later, doesn't mean I don't feel bad about it. It's just that I'm choosing to feel bad, or work through that failure, that process, that throw, away from the team, where I don't sort of bring it to the captain for resolution. So if I have personal conflicts, so say I feel like I'm not having a really good day somewhere else, instead of sort of like not addressing it and adding it to the collective conscious of your team, it might be better just processed and left off, which is, I know it might be a lot to ask of people when it comes to building values in team and performing. But if you want to be able to maintain sustainable performance to a certain level, then this collective conscious of your team needs to be guarded, and it needs to be monitored, and it needs to be filtered. So any questions? I would be happy to sort of have a discussion about this.
Hey,
Yeah, Smita.
sorry, I overlap with someone. Sorry, this is Kedar here with Smita.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I think one in this whole aspect of inclusion and as being a part of collective conscious, I think certain decision making during a tournament, like among the many decisions make either on the field or off the field, there is always this confusion on when to sort of keep it more democratic in the decision to kind of get in people's buy-ins or get them to sort of give in their inputs and make an informed decision, and when to, in the interest of efficiency, sort of take a decision on behalf of everyone else. That sort of a confusion sometimes does exist. Is it something you have encountered? How have you addressed it?
So this buy-in thing, yeah. So about this buy-in, right? If you're trying to get their buy-in during a tournament, then maybe the values that you've set as a team hasn't been internalized by them or by, your teammates. So I mean, I like, okay, so how I would see, going into a tournament is I would expect the captain to set expectations on what to expect. And I don't think it's a democracy once you get to the tournament. It's either the coach or the captain who needs to make that call, because that's sort of why they've been chosen and put there. So, but to get the team to completely trust that captain who we've put in a leadership position is the whole deal of creating this buy-in, as and like creating that buy-in right now, saying, hey, this is what this team stands for, and when we go there, this is what we'll do. So yeah, when it comes to team culture, like, it's not enough just to talk about it, just like how, it's not enough just to talk about teams, like, spirit of the game. It's important to write it down and say, hey, this is exactly what we want to do, this is how we want to act, this is how we will do things.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense to sort of be in a place where you don't have to wonder whether the culture of the team is intact or not in a tournament and having to get a buy-in. I think by then it should already be set.
Yeah. So the thing is, like, it's easy to say that, we want to trust our teammates as a team value, or we want to have fun. But do we really spend enough time in internalizing this, saying, hey, how do I have fun on the field? And it's not enough if it's just like a top-down communication, right? It's not enough if the captain just expects you to have fun. Somewhere, the individual athlete needs to process, internalize why ultimate frisbee is fun, or what part of it is fun. Which is why, like, some people have more fun in off-field sessions or being sideline, and, like, they add a lot of stuff there, while some people are purely like, I just want to come here, play a lot of frisbee, because this physical activity, this, this whole thing of competing and all of these things, work for them. So I think it's also about, yeah, sorry, I cut you off.
No, yeah, just agreeing. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Sangi, I wanted to just get your thoughts on something. So once you kind of set a goal as a team, how would you suggest that as individual players, they break it down, and like when you're talking about internalizing, because as a team you would have a larger goal, but then there is still, I think, a role that you kind of bring in, or that you play in achieving that goal. Is there something that a player can do to kind of break down the larger focus and see how they apply themselves to it? Are there any tricks or something that you could maybe give us?
Well, so which is why this is it's hard to set like three things that everybody agrees on, right? Some people agree to something to a certain extent, like, for example, when, like, say, this whole thing of like wanting to medal is something that I didn't really like. It was important for the team, so it was important for me. So this is personal experience, obviously. But did it really, like, did the medal sort of like make the difference for me? I would say no. Like, I enjoyed the kind of like ultimate frisbee we played there. And that's because somewhere you have to stop and think about why you actually do what you do, right? And that's a tough question to answer, actually. So what I'm proposing here, with regards to setting your team culture, might actually is actually asking for a lot of accountability and individual accountability from everybody. Because like, if it's fun, then it's fun. if it's serious, then it's serious. Like you have to be able to say this is what the team wants, and this is what everybody is okay with. Which means when something is proposed, you will always have a bunch of people who are not as involved. You will have a lot of people who are very good at what they do, which is internalize these things for themselves. But some people don't internalize any aspect of something, maybe, or only one certain aspect. So when it comes to that, I would think like the leaders or like those who do this well can just show or do and say, hey, this is how it is. And that's where it comes back to having set practices and being intentional in the way we say. Like, for example, say the whole value of having fun as a team, right? There are, like, it's easy to say this, but how does one apply it to their own life, right? Say for somebody, like each person's upbringing, their situation now is different, and maybe even the way they approach a tournament, the way they approach ultimate frisbee is different. But it's again asking for that accountability and asking your teammates to draw some boundaries so that they contribute only what we've agreed to contribute to our collective conscious.
Got it.
Sangi, I had like a question, and this might be slightly longer. So basically, what I've understood from your entire concept of collective conscious is we're saying that like we're putting a lot of onus of it on players, that there are a lot of things that they have to kind of resolve themselves, and the captain is responsible for certain more strategic elements of the team. And I think this is kind of where I come from a very different point of view, where I somehow feel like people management is probably the key thing that a team needs to work around, and that especially from this point of view wherein everybody is coming from like different point of view. So I think the role that a captain plays is kind of how do you facilitate these differences in a very constructive manner towards a goal, and that involves, I think, primarily a lot of people management. So what's like your take on that?
So agreed. So this session, maybe the title was misleading. So with regards to who's a captain, the idea is that we need to be our own captains. So whatever we expect from the captains, we need to do so that we can make their job easier. But when it comes to people management, yeah, that's unfortunately that's where we are at now. So maybe what the captains can do is help internalize these things instead of babysitting or coddling or making decisions as to how we will interact with people who are unhappy. And maybe even telling people that you should expect to be unhappy might help sometimes, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. um
Guys, do we have more questions? We have 10 more minutes.
I thought it was going to be a more interactive thing. My bad.
No, I think I think we're used to kind of having these sessions where one person's talking, we're all just sitting and listening, and then kind of having like a really short time to come up with a lot of questions. So maybe that.
Okay. Mm,
I think just one more. I mean, I'm just trying to understand this better. So, we were talking about how everybody kind of be your own
so
captain, like
yeah,
the
sorry.
whole idea of being your own captain. I think it would be great if you could break that down a little bit more in terms of what you mean as being your own captain.
Yeah, I was just thinking that like I didn't really go there. So thank you so much for reminding me. So like okay, let me use this example of like Karate Kid. Like most of us have seen it. Yes, I'm assuming. And in that, like you have the whole coat on, coat off, or wax on, wax off moment where like somebody is being told to do just one thing, and that person there represented by a kid is saying like, hey, like, yeah, okay, I'll do this to a certain extent, but I don't see the point of it. So there, like that kid or that character hasn't really internalized or doesn't really know why that person is doing what they are doing, whereas the coach or the adult in that scene is the one that later sort of tells them, this is why you were doing this. So here again, like, think of this as you doing some skill, and like the adult in this situation as your captain or your coach. um, the whole idea of being a captain, being your own captain, is, can you captain yourself? Can you be your own coach, or can you be this person who reasons with yourself first before you add it to the collective conscious? So instead of saying, I've had this thought or I feel this way and this needs to go immediately on, and like, this is what needs to happen, is there a way in which um, we can sort of monitor this inner child in us so that we can reason with ourselves? So it's like, say, again, coming back to throwing hugs, say I've not connected like 5 out of 10 times. Instead of just being disappointed in everything and adding that disappointment to the collective conscious, is there a way in which I can reason with myself, where I say, yeah, okay, why is this not happening? How can I fix this? And if what else can I do if this is not working, where I can still contribute to the goal of the team. So with the whole wax on wax off thing, like, there you need this sort of explanation from another person, like, this perspective. One, obviously, a good captain could maybe give this perspective to start with, so that there is more buy-in, so that people, or like the athletes, are not lost as to where they're actually going with what the team stands for or what they want out of this tournament, etc.
Great, thank you.
I seem to be talking very fast for some reason. I apologize. Next time I'll try to make it longer. Hi, Deepthi.
Hello, how are you?
Good, yeah.
Sorry
Hey,
I
what's the
joined
question?
in late. So question is, it's a thin line, right? Because uh, leaving it to collective conscious versus building that communication itself. So how do you differentiate the two? Because you also want, as a captain, you also want to be progressive in that thought process.
Okay. Um. Okay, so the actual roles of like a captain, very necessary. I'm not saying this or that. I'm saying, how can we ease a captain's burden? So that was the idea behind this. But and I was saying, like, all this policing, right? Nobody says captains need to police how people are feeling or how they need to react to certain situations. So what I'm suggesting is that you set best practices within your team, saying, hey, like, say for example, how do you deal with somebody who's not happy with game time, right? So if there is maybe an understanding, or if it's been set that this is some, okay, so maybe game time is again to national team is what is a can okay mm, just thinking of a more relevant, yeah, so somebody said, like, not gotten a pass, or it's big, and they think, like, I've made this cut 4 times and this person is not passing it to me. That if you make more, if you empower more leadership qualities, which is accountability in each person, which is by setting practices as a captain, as leaders in the team, saying, I will watch out for what I add to this team. I will not speak this way, or if I'm feeling this, I will sort of address, this is where I'm acting from. So that sort of accountability and communication from people who have leadership roles will set that tone for people who are coming into your collective conscious. Just by being the way you expect somebody to be, you will be setting the tone for your team. But again, along with clear communication as to, this is why we are doing this. I'm not saying, you just do and then it'll happen. No, it's not going to happen. But I'm just the way even leaders approach as to how things need to be resolved. Like for as a captain, say one person comes and like complains about something to me, and like instead of saying like, hey, why don't you go talk to this person, and like sort of giving them that agency, if I encourage, say, okay, I'll talk to them or something like that, then that's me bringing in my own like qualities or like my style into captaincy, which need not go along with long term team values. Need not.
I mean, if I got this correct, you're talking about captain bias into the team of self-experience and how that plays into the team. My question was more related to, there are always players who need that extra, is my captain watching out for me sort of a thing,
Mm-hmm.
which is the fine balance, and how do you handle that was my question.
Correct. That is a very good question. Mm, I don't really have an answer to that, right?
I think
So,
we could probably open it up if
yeah.
someone else's experiences on it.
So, yeah. Suhani, since you've captained a bunch, you have something to add about the fine line? Yeah.
Yeah, I think just it also relates to what I was saying earlier, that this is just probably my personal captaincy style, and I think Sangeet would have kind of experienced it, wherein I do tend to do a little bit more hand holding than probably required, and like I kind of do get sensitive about how players on the team are feeling, and I think I'm trying to draw a balance on the other side of how to kind of develop that thing in the team where certain things are kind of taken care of. So yeah, even I think it kind of comes with personal experience as to how you draw that balance, because I think ultimately everything in life is a little bit about paradoxes, and you have to kind of, through experience and trial and error, figure your way out, and you wouldn't really have answers which would say be right for everybody, because everybody is varying context. So that's a little bit what I have to add on to this.
Yeah, and to add on to what Suhani said, I think maybe even for the about the balance, right? That's where like the leaders' qualities of empathy and inclusion and understanding and ability to be open to differences will step in, and then it'll be their call on whether and how they want to handle this person. And I think more than like, again, you don't have to be that person's I mean, you are a mentor in that place, so as that person, I think you can set some communication, or you can set some practices with this person as to, hey, like, how I think how I would handle this situation, and maybe these are ways in which you can think about this whole thing. So even if it's failure, or if it's usually it's failure, right? That's when people are unhappy. So when it comes to that, I would say like the captain can, again, like, they have to make this call, because they are the ones at the end of the day who's sort of interacted with this teammate for a long time, and in the sense of a mentor.
I would actually just like to add on to, I think, Sangi, what you were saying earlier. And Kuri, I think, like you said, yes, it is a fine line, but I think it is also important to make, people aware of when the captain's doing something that is not actually something that he or she is supposed to do. Like, for example, if you're trying to resolve conflict between two players, ideally you want people to kind of interact and resolve it within themselves, because I think that's when you actually build chemistry within your team and with other players. But if the captain feels that it's necessary for them to step in, and I think it needs to be a conversation that is facilitated by the captain and not a conversation that is had by the captain. I think it's about being a third person, making sure that it's a healthy discussion, than to be the postman between these two people. I mean, in my personal opinion, I think that's that's a good place for a captain to still make sure that teammates are kind of building bonds between each other. At the same time, the captain's kind of doing their job to make sure that he's kind of maintaining a balance, or she's kind of maintaining a balance.
Yeah, I
Sorry,
think
I just,
it's interesting though.
Sorry, just to get a clarification before I provide my response. You
Can't hear
mentioned
you
some.
well.
How about now?
Yeah, better.
Much better.
Okay. Now, I just want a quick clarification before I provided my response. Were you talking about handling or addressing people who may need a little more of that attention and how to sort of strike a balance with them? Is that around what you were getting at?
Are you asking me or?
Yeah, I'm asking. I'm asking Kuri just to clarify that. I was just trying to get the.
Yeah, Kedar, it's a mix of, I mean, you have all different people in the team, right? Some need it, some don't. So I get that a captain's role is to be all ears and all eyes, but then restricting yourself to reaction. So yeah, when do you back off? I guess Suhani makes a very good point about experience and learning. So yeah, my question was more towards the majority, really.
Okay.
The thing that's getting missed is like, I'm not talking about starting like team culture, but like sort of bulletproofing it, which means like maybe I'm addressing this from like a performance point of view, or like maybe I feel like that's where this is getting lost.
Sangeet, when you say bulletproofing, you mean in terms of reinforcement and kind of preserving the culture? I'm just trying to understand the bulletproofing aspects in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like, I mean, it's always easy to say like, so how much test can your team's culture, value, and conscious sort of withstand is what we're looking at, right? When it comes to performance, like say there are so many uncontrollables, all of them are going to go back into what you do with all of those feelings and emotions on the field. So when say, okay, one thing happens and you're okay, your team is okay, two things happen, you're still okay, three things happen, and then suddenly nothing is okay anymore. You know what I mean? So instead of suddenly sort of being in a place where we are like just having values but not really having those values really hold true for us, and this has happened like to an extent maybe in certain like I mean, I don't know if do you guys set values for your team when you play? Is that a thing that you do?
Not specific to a tournament as a team culture. Yeah, there'll be like 2 to 4 pillars that we without exception try and follow.
Okay, and like how would you sort of implement them?
I think it's the same as developing a habit. So I mean, and I was just sort of discussing here also about how like every build a skill, build a behavior, anything. There's sort of a 3-step process, right? Like you provided an experience of what it's like. If I want to learn forehand, someone shows me what forehand is like, and I kind of get a sense of what it looks like. I'm giving a technical example for something more related to culture.
Sorry, it just got like scrambled a little bit, if you don't mind.
Sorry, I was explaining that. I mean, I'm just drawing an easier example to explain. If I were to be learning forehand, first I get an experience of what forehand is like. And then I sort of develop my skill, and then I internalize it in a way that I'm able to execute the skill, not just if I were to do throw, but also in the game scenario. So it's a sort of a process of habit development. And the same thing is what I would try and establish even culturally. If we were to talk about giving positive reinforcement, giving feedback, various aspects of whatever that we have just like intensity, discipline, any of those, humility, right? So I think it's important to sort of work with the team to decide it. But once that's done, work in smaller groups to sort of reinforce that between teammates. It's not something that I feel a captain, besides maybe help define it. I mean, they can oversee it across teammates, but the development of that that culture is something that sort of works with a peer learning system. How I like teammates demonstrating that to each other, and you as a person overseeing it necessarily have to lead the example of each one of those. At least that's one of the parts of setting that in bulletproofing it as I would look at.
Okay. So, okay. Thanks for sharing that. So, coming back to, I mean, not coming back to, but the objective of, say, thinking of your team as as having a overhead collective conscious is to sort of help you self police yourself when you are on the field, so that you don't add too many emotions that are not necessary. For example, like self pity is an emotion that's not necessary as an individual to show. So I'm not saying it's good or bad, but if it is sort of inbuilt into your team culture that there is no space for shame and self pity on this team, and if something like this happens, it's a learning opportunity, and this is how it's a and this is why it's a learning opportunity, opportunity. So I feel like if leaders and captains who sort of do this well for themselves can give this perspective, set this practice for the team through intentional measures, like say you practice resolving calls before a tournament, right, to practice spirit. Similarly, can you practice your team values so that everybody sort of maybe learns to internalize them? So if you do that well, Katie, so maybe there's some ways in which that could be sort of shared with your teammates so that everybody can use that.
Yeah, yeah, that aligns with what you earlier said about sort of internalizing it before you get into a tournament and not come into the tournament trying to figure out if it works or not.
So I think the part I'm talking about is the whole idea of collective conscious is to sort of acknowledge that each of us contribute to it. It's not just the captain who is sort of in charge of holding this whole thing together, right? So the captain could be like a super happy person with this much energy, but like each player who's not unhappy is constantly going to dip into the energy of the team, the collective energy of the team where everybody is contributing. So you will have sometimes people taking out more than what they're giving, which is sort of coming back to the whole idea of collective conscious, which is to encourage accountability so that teammates can sort of set this as best practice. Well, I guess that's it. I don't have anything new to say.
I have an experience to share about the discussion. I mean, I missed the first part, but if we have time.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So, with Sloppy, it's a recreational and have fun is the primary objective. And the way we handle, I mean, giving an example, right? So, how we make sure everybody is having fun is not the captain's checking whether you're having fun, but each player looks out whether someone is, so it's everybody's responsibility, which is what I think is, it can be towards the technical skills as well, or did you have water today or whatever, right? So it's I'm guessing it's the little skills that add on and defining them that makes the difference, Sangi.
Yeah. So even you having set this practice of, hey, captain is not going to check on you guys, but you have to check on each other, right? That is sort of, that would go towards bulletproofing your team. But hey, can you check on yourself and like sort of like, or, like set practices where you say, when am I feeling, say, away from normal? So yeah, anyway, I'm having fun and suddenly I'm not having fun. Can we teach this individual or this teammate and all of us to be a little bit more self-aware so that they recognize that it's them not having fun and that it's not external? But
So
I
I have, yeah,
yeah, Sachin.
continue. Sorry.
No, go on.
So I had this question, like managing a small team, I mean young childs, is difficult, right, for the captain and for the coach.
Correct.
So how should we teach them the consciousness about, because we cannot focus on each and every child, and even though we focus, it's a bit difficult to manage all this stuff. So is there any activity that we can do for that? Can you recommend me few to us?
How old are the, like, are
It's like
they high school kids, middle school kids?
they are middle school kids.
Okay.
Middle school kids.
Okay. And okay. So with regards to communication, right? Like, more how to involve them. Can you maybe ask, like, hello, Sachin?
Yeah, I'm hearing you.
So, you're saying, like, how can we teach them this thing? So, like, the first thing I would teach or encourage is honest and open, clear communication. So, to start off with, maybe the collective conscious, it requires each person to sort of interact with it honestly, right? And be accountable. So, you can say, and what I would say is, like, be open to all the communication that comes, and as a captain or a coach, don't shame any of it. There is no right thing to feel about frisbee and wrong thing to feel about frisbee, but simple things that I think you might be already using is, you can use a lot of hand signals that don't require people to talk too much, but movements and actions that sort of helps you understand how they feel. So it can be as simple as yes, no, maybe, how you're feeling, or like, give me a scale, like, how did this activity make you feel. It can be like, hey, you can read out an example and you can say, if you agree, you can walk to this area and stay there. So it can be maybe more physical. You can encourage them to communicate more physically first by moving their body around, and then maybe you can continue with some communication exercises. Does that
I
help?
wonder if it's also assuring the kids that it's okay, they're learning all the time. So, and giving them the space to discuss
Yeah, so
if they're still young.
yeah, so thanks for the idea. I actually trying to do it, and managing is always difficult for the young kids.
Yeah,
So
so that's,
doing it.
yeah, exactly. And with young kids, right? They obviously have one part of them that they are just getting socialized, and there is certain parts of them that is already socialized. So even us as people, like, when we are here interacting in this place, like, this has a collective conscious over it, and that is maybe in the hopes of discussing what it means to set team culture, or what it means to set a culture that cannot be penetrated, that is bulletproof, that will win given any cost. So maybe that is not the best thing to sort of apply when we're talking about coaching young kids, because, like Deepti said, the first thing you want to get them to do is express themselves with everything that they have, like, with regards to playing, with regards to chucking, experiment, creating more experiential learning places without shame, would make it an enjoyable experience as a young person.
Yeah.
Sanjay, I had a question for next. Just to check something will be addressing.
I can't hear you.
Um,
Sorry. I can't hear.
Katie, your
Sanjay,
audio is
hey,
breaking.
how about now?
Yeah.
Okay. This is a question for the future, just to see if it's a topic we'll be covering. We've spoken a lot about kind of bulletproofing culture and sort of collective consciousness from a captain's perspective, um, largely at least today. Is there something we're going to be looking at even from a player's perspective on what all, sort of as teammates, how could we be contributing that?
I think
Um,
what will make sense is sort of maybe the how I see it, the mental toughness aspect of it, right? That is sort of the player aspect of the collective conscious, and how they can contribute to it and how they do contribute to it.
Got it. Okay.
So that will talk about how to draw these boundaries, and how you can be as efficient as a player you can be without, so you don't have to go through all of your emotional feelings on the field each time, right? So is there a way in which we can sort of say, okay, this boundary I'm going to draw for myself as to what I will let into my conscious at this point of time, and that sort of also adds to the bigger collective conscious in its own ways, the practices.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
So there is no collective conscious without an individual. So that's why, which is important, because if I'm adding shitty things to the team, right, I'm still adding shitty things to the team. It's not about whether like the rest of the team knows about it or like they don't, but for myself, that is what I've contributed to this our shared collective conscious.
Yeah. Okay.
Sangeet, but isn't the team also a safe space where you want to be able to express, or if there is an emotion?
Yes, with it
Because you're
again
talking
it
about
depends.
bulletproofing and you're like having a shield. So it feels like it's mostly depending on the level at which you are as a team and as an individual. So there is a confusion in my mind as to what bulletproofing are we talking about.
Um. Okay. So, I'm not sure
Sorry
what
for the
you
bouncer.
see as a. No, I'm just like trying to understand what you see as a shield, because what I'm trying to say is like these shields or these boundaries are not a bad thing when it comes to teams. Like we've seen, like each of us come with a lot of personal bias and personal beliefs and the way we interact. So when we bring it to a team, then we need to sort of filter what boundaries or like what we are sort of sharing there, right? I need not
Then
share all of my beliefs with all of my teammates, and that's not going to happen.
so we're not being us true to ourselves then, isn't it?
No, you're being completely true to yourself, but you are coming into Frisbee with this thing of performance or with this thing of wanting to, whatever your value is, right? Here, I'm talking about it from like a performance point of view.
Only.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and I'm
Okay.
not saying this doesn't, I mean, again, I'm not saying don't be unhappy or don't deal with all of it. Obviously, in any team, right, you cannot skip all of this. You will have places where you will have disagreements and you will have to resolve it. But, not but, I'm just saying there are, I'm not really telling you the specific ways in which you can go ahead and create this collective consciousness or monitor and filter it, which is sort of what I didn't get into. But I'm saying, with regards to building a team that you want, say, long term sustainability as a state team or as a national team or as a professional team, somewhere needs this sort of a clear boundary drawing as to what I'm putting in, or an understanding as to what I'm putting into the team. And I can understand that this may not be possible when it comes to children, but as an adult team, um, individuals need to be accountable for what they are sharing there. And that doesn't mean don't share at all, and that doesn't mean don't disagree at all, but it is maybe giving them the agency to disagree or share with respect, um, in accordance to the team values. If a team decides to not talk about any feelings at all, right, and only focus on performance, they'll still be in their own way. If they completely believe in that, they will be able to perform.
Yeah, they would definitely be able to perform. But yeah, it might just be restrictive emotionally. And it's also a space for emotional assurances of sort. You perform better when you're able. It's a team sport, right? It's not an individual sport. I agree with the yes, you have to have your liabilities and restrictions, but how much? Or yeah, I think that's the key, captain and the leadership role.
Okay, so I don't know, maybe I'm not really saying restrict yourself or don't add anything, but be very clear about what you're adding. That's
Okay.
all I'm saying. So say like I'm feeling shitty about having dropped a throw, then I need to be clear that I'm adding this to the team, and that's okay. Then you'll have teammates who come and say, hey, this is what it is. But if I don't add that at all with the like with honesty, saying I've dropped it and I feel shitty, and then I decide to add something else to the collective conscious, which is maybe a tendency to push blame and say the wind was this way or the throw was this way or something like that, I'm saying that is problematic, and that sort of goes against the values that you are trying to set for your own team.
Got it. Cool.
I'm not, of course, emotional growth, of course, sharing, of course, all of those things.
I think maybe one more thing that we could maybe discuss in one of the future sessions also is, given that now we have a lot of youngsters getting into the sport, like especially I've seen that a lot in Bangalore, I think, and also in Chennai, we have a lot of kids who are getting into the sport. So I think it's a good way to kind of, maybe we could discuss and come up with something or understand it for ourselves as to how are we encouraging young kids to actually process their emotions on the field and off the field, and how are they sharing it. So it's not that, this much is good and anything beyond that is bad, but what are you bringing in? Okay, if you're feeling bad, why are you feeling bad and how do you process it? So I think it's the processing of emotions that we could maybe figure out how to do, or how to kind of, I mean, I'm sure the kids are doing it
I
really
think
well, but
like starting off with this, I had just one intention with this thing, which is be very intentional about what you put down as team practice or team culture or an expectation. So as long as you're intentional in the way you're setting those practices, then it'll be fine. You will not have to worry about like other things where like, what if this happens or what if that happens, because you've thought about it, you've sort of accommodated all of those things and you've put it down. So like have clear structure as to how you are going to create these open experiential learning spaces, or like how Madhu said, how are we going to help them process emotion, even our own teammates and even ourselves. So yeah, I hear you, Madhu. Maybe that's something we can I'll add into mental toughness.
awesome. Thank you.